Welcome to the Growth Whisperers, where everything that we talk about is building enduring, great companies. I'm Brad Giles, and as always, joined today by my co-host, Kevin Lawrence. Kevin, hello, and how are you today?
I'm doing great, Brad. I'm happy to be in September, getting things kind of going for what's like the start of the new year or the third round of this year for us. So yeah, I'm excited to be doing the show today.
Yeah, me too. We've got a good show lined up. And things are good in my part of the world. It's spring, it's starting to warm up. We've had a very wet winter. So yeah, I'm excited. So as always, we like to begin with a word or phrase of the day. And what about yourself, Kevin? How would you open the meeting with a word or phrase?
My word is freedom, and it's a very important word to me. And because I'm going to the United States of America tomorrow. I went and got my COVID test. I got both styles of COVID tests today. The one where they just tickle your nostril and the one where they, go for your brain. Actually, It wasn't as bad as I thought, but I got my test done and I'm off to fly to Chicago in the morning for a meeting, coming back just under the wire so I don't have to get tested a second time. And so with freedom, I have not been in the United States of America, since March. I think it was March of 2019. And a year and a half, longest I've never been in there. As a child, we went down almost every weekend or every second weekend. And I see the US, I look out my window, I see right into the US. It's right there. I'm 10 minutes from the border. So I'm excited to be traveling down to, I love the state. So freedom is my word. I get to experience it again. How about you, Brad?
I laughed when you said that because my word was very close to freedom as well. And the reason is I saw this absolutely amazing video. American college football has started up again. Yes. And there's this song called Enter Sandman by a band called Metallica. You may have, and it's got this amazing start to it. And I encourage, if you're listening, to look it up. So it's the first game back after all of the COVID shutdowns for like a year or two. And then they pan across the stands. There must be 30,000 people all wearing exactly the same red jumper. And then there's that song. It's kind of got a bit of a gradual build up and more build up. And all of the 30,000 people in the stands are jumping up and down. Okay. And then it's just the players are in the dugout and they're waiting as the music builds until it gets to the certain point. And then they sprint out for the first time since COVID onto the pitch. And you can't help
You mean the field?
Yes, the field.
Okay. Got it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it is just that sense of freedom of we're back out, we're back watching the crowd. Yeah, absolutely. It was just like a 1-minute video. I encourage you to look that up. So yeah, freedom as well.
Awesome.
Freedom.
Beautiful. Great minds think alike. Well, let's dig in. What's the show today, Brad? What are we talking about?
Well, it's about success, isn't it? It's about, what is the mindset for success? And the title is Why You Can't Save Your Way to Success. And then the subtitle kind of is Stepping Over Dollars to Pick Up Nickels. And some people will think that they can achieve success by focusing on the dollar that they save here or the dollar that they save there. Now, this is, I guess this is a personal episode as well as a team or leader-based episode relative to your business. But it's the same principle. And so we see people sometimes who are so focused on saving $1 here or saving $1 there, and it can be a little bit consuming, and they think that that's how they're going to succeed, when sometimes, in fact, most of the time, the opposite is often true.
Yeah, and it's people have great intentions, but they get distracted. I remember one executive team we worked with, and it was a bit of a tougher time in the business, and they made the decisions to get rid of the disposable coffee cups in the kitchen where all of the executives and leadership team would go. And it was a good sized company. So they would save money by not having to purchase paper coffee cups. Now I did a little bit of math, and it took me all of about 1.362 seconds to do. It's called the value of an executive or leader's time, having to wash their own coffee cup. And if you take in the time of the week, 2 cups of coffee a day, 5 days a week, 10, 12 cups of coffee, you start adding up the time of the cost just to wash the darn cup. It just, and maybe it was sending a message. And there's things about saving costs. They can send messages and things like that. But at some point, it gets a little bit silly, and people with beautiful intentions are saving money, but it's not worth the time it takes to save it. And they're not balancing out time and money to look at true cost, not just currency in the equation. But again, good intentions sometimes go a little bit too far. And as you and I have talked about, Brad, the worst part is that it's not that even sometimes they're saving on the wrong costs. Is that potentially in their business, they shouldn't be worried about saving costs. They should be worried about doing something else that might help grow the company.
Yeah.
And it's easy to get caught up in that. And that's why there's this kind of joke we have sometimes. We say, and I love accountants. Make it very clear. I love accountants. I work
but I'm just about to stick them.
I am. I love them. But there's a saying is that, if you really want to screw up the company, let the accountants run the business, because you can't cut your way to success. I've seen it. And again, and I know some accountants who are great, by the way, great CEOs, so that's a bit of a joke. I know some accountants that are great CEOs, but just clipping costs doesn't create growth or create a better enduring.
Yeah, company. But the accountant has a role, a very important role, and the leader or the CEO has another very important role. I wrote a book about that CEO role called Made to Thrive. But I had a friend who owned he owned a few businesses, and as they do, he grew one and then he started another one and he grew that one. But the initial family-owned business, they decided several years ago to appoint their accountant to run the business. Then after about 5 years, he rang me up and he said, Brad, I've got to pause because this guy swears a lot. So I'm trying to think about what he said and tailor it to the episode or the language. So, he said, this accountant, he's been there, and he said, we're making more money than we ever have. Like, the profits are outstanding. He said, but every year the revenue has gone backwards.
Right.
And that's good. You can handle that for a year or two.
Because you can better squeeze the existing revenue, but then your energy's not on growing the revenue.
Yeah. But then after about 5 years, it becomes alarming because he's like,
yes,
this equation isn't working. And so it's important to focus on the little things to make sure that you're maximizing the profit. But if you look at it without the lens of we need to continue to focus on growing the top line and the GP as well, there can be some challenges in that.
Yeah. So the first thing to really be looking at is, based on what your business needs, what does it need more? Creating more value for existing customers or new customers so you can grow the revenues and grow the margin. I suspect that all businesses need some of that. But, or do you have an overflow of juicy demand that's healthy margin business? Do you have all of that you need, right? And if you have all of that you need, you're probably not as worried about costs. You're probably worried about systems and optimizing quality of service delivery or something like that. So do you need more good business? Is that the thing? Or are you getting a good business, but you're not getting a profitability, i.e. there's not efficiency in the system? We chatted before about lean process, which can really help. If you've got an abundance of business and you just need to run more efficiently and generate more profit for every dollar that flows through the system. But normally when people go to cut cost, they're actually looking the wrong way. And it's not that you shouldn't cut cost. You often need to, but if you only do that, they're missing the opportunities for more revenue and value creation. And the challenge is reducing cost, I would say, is not a high skill activity. It's not cognitively demanding to go and find cost because it's always there. There's always inefficiency in the system.
And people can get frustrated by waste. And
Yeah.
then that frustration can translate into an emotion. And that emotion can lead them to make decisions that are not the best use of their time.
Yeah, exactly. And emotions. And that's why, I've got great advisors. I was talking to one of my advisors recently about a project I'm working on. He said, okay, Kevin, what is the value in dollars of this issue you want to sort out? And as we went through it, he's like, why are we talking about this? He goes, there's not enough dollars in that problem for you to even be worth talking to me about it.
Yeah.
So he goes, delegate it, let it go, just do something. Just don't think about it because it's not worth enough. And based on the scale of businesses, I had one amazing leader I worked with. Unless the value of an issue was about 10 million, he wouldn't pay attention. And based on the scale of his business, that was about the right number. It took me a while to get it.
Yep.
But there's a lot of people where their minimum thought should be on something that's probably a couple $100,000, but they get stuck in a couple of grand.
And so it makes me think about Peter Drucker, who we've spoken about before on this podcast. And he's saying on the Effective Executive, his book, page number 1, right? The job of an executive is to be effective. The job of a manager is to be efficient. And so if you're viewing this podcast only through a personal lens, then you are the executive of your own household or your own balance sheet. If you are in a business, then you are the executive of your own business. But remember, for managers, their job is to be efficient, and for executive, it's to be effective.
Yeah. And so I heard a great case study on something called Sirius. They're an aircraft manufacturer. I was interested I mentioned to someone that I tried to get my pilot's license. I went on a test flight, hated it. And he asked me what airplane I was in. I said a certain Cessna model. He goes, well, that was probably your issue. He goes, you need to fly a Sirius. And I'm like, okay. He goes, because it's almost like flying an iPhone. It's a modern airplane. And the great thing about Sirius is that if you mess up, there's a little handle you pull, and then a parachute pops out and then sets you on the ground. So it's made for recreational people like us that often screw up because we don't have enough experience. You just pull the thing, the plane drops to the ground, probably breaks the landing gear, costs you 25 grand, and you're good to go.
And hopefully it doesn't hit a house.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So anyways, so I went and test drove one of these planes. It was beautiful, all that stuff. But as I studied the company, I found this great article about them and efficiency. And when they started the planes. They sell about $1 million. And they started the planes, and they started only fixing the problems that were $6,000 a plane or greater, only, because there's a list of there was money falling all over the floor, but they started at 6,000 a plane, and then they went, after they fixed all those, they went to 5,000 a plane, and then 4. And by the time of this article, they were still at $500 a plane. They were leaving waste of. It was a very smart way. Interesting, their manufacturing facility, I think they 5x or 7x volume in the same facility, because they just built efficiency. But again, they have great demand, they have a strong brand, but they prioritized and only focused on the big ticket stuff instead of wasting their time cleaning up 75 cents when it just doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. A good analogy that I like is about a daily coffee. So most people would drink coffee, and many people would go, and let's say that you spent $5 each weekday on coffee. People might think, I need to save my way to success. I need to stop having coffee. And then over a year, that'd be $25 a week. That'd be $1,300 a year, $1,300. And I
love where you're going with this.
So then suddenly after 2 years, you've got 2,600, but you're a sentient being, and you need to find these small points of reward to keep you focused. Then on the flip side of that, what would you need to do to make another $5 a day? And would it be possible? Yeah. So is it possible that you could actually, if you, rather than focused on these smaller things that give you personal reward that matter, what if you
Yes.
focused on the upside? And, would it be possible to make $10 a day or $50 a week? It's certainly possible.
Yeah. So instead of trying to save not buy a coffee every day, think of how you could make 5 times what that coffee is worth every day.
Exactly.
And just look at, and that's the way we think about business. Instead of trying to put too much and redirect the whole organization to saving $5, redirect the whole organization to making $5,000 a person on different things, i.e. changing our focus and not getting lost in it. I've seen it in lots of different companies where we've done this, even to the point, one of our companies, we did a theme over a quarter where every employee, and they were in business services for small businesses, right? Like small, mom and pop type businesses. And every employee was thinking about potential clients for the company.
Yeah.
So they had 350 people every day, and there was a contest on a weekly and a monthly basis. We made it a theme, generating leads for the company. Now, they had done things around saving some money here and there, but they were growing the business.
Yeah.
And they got a lot of mediocre leads, but they landed some of the people, like one of the frontline employees brought in an amazing, amazing piece of business. And so instead, they just put the energy on growth. And I'll never forget, a great CEO worked with. His name is Brent Parent. We call him BP. He's built and sold a number of businesses. Just brilliant, brilliant CEO at this. And he always says to his people, are you in the big circle or are you in the little circle? And he called it 95-5. And I'll keep this with me for the rest of my life. And what it really is the 95 is 95% in the big circle is opportunities, and the 5% in the little circle is problems. And really what he would say is, hey, why don't you just go sell something?
Yes.
Like literally, just like, go solve a problem for a customer and sell something. That's the opportunities. And people get worried about the problems. And I remember that organization as we scaled it and did an amazing job with that. They did an amazing job. We ran it at probably 2 points less of EBITDA than we could have. But we ran it fast and a little bit loose, but we were growing like crazy and making profits like crazy. If we tried to squeeze all the dollars out of the business, we would have slowed down the growth engine, and it probably wouldn't have been a fun place to work either. Right? Because it was an entrepreneurial, had an awesome entrepreneurial spirit, lots of autonomy, all kinds of good stuff. But 95-5. 95 on the opportunities, 5% on the problems. And we did try to save money, but it wasn't really a major focus. The biggest was creating more gross profit by taking care of a customer.
And that's the mindset that we're really talking about today, which is if you have one single constraint, which is time, then how do you use that time most effectively? You can use 5 hours, let's say hypothetically, 5 hours per week, trying to figure out how to save $100 over there, or you could spend 5 hours a week trying to make $100 over in that direction.
Or you could spend 5 hours a week trying to analyze a spreadsheet, or you could pick up the phone and talk to 5 customers.
Yes.
Or go and visit 5 stores or visit your frontline staff. It's the root of all of this is that we have great intentions, but often our energy goes the wrong places. And it's even why in our quarterly planning sessions, I do, to the best of my abilities, depending on who the company is and what they're like, but to get them to try and apply a dollar value to each of their goals. And because the same thing, we've seen things where people are all fired up about this objective, which we would call like a rock on a quarterly basis. Oh yeah, we got to do this. And we calculate the impact of the business, and it's about $5,000. And then the other 3 each have an impact of $1 million to $2 million. So if you've got $1 million, $1 million, $3 million, $1.5 million, And then the other one was, I think it was $1 million every year, like forever. And then you got one that's $5,000.
I love that. I love that. And I know you've said that before. It's attribute a cost to your rocks, to the priorities for the company. And then suddenly you can say, well, is it actually worth doing? Because sometimes they sound cool, or you feel like you're solving a big problem. But an executive's job is to be effective.
It is. And this applies to so many things. It's about, dealing with certain types of, some companies have an expense report, and if it's under a certain amount, you don't need to submit your receipts. There's all these things that waste a lot of it. So the message here is that there's lots of great things that we can think about to save money, and saving money is a good thing. It should be considered. When you're negotiating big contracts, you should negotiate it and try and get something better if you can. It's crazy to, negotiate and not get coffee cups for the whole leaders in the company, but then renew your IT services contract and not try to get better terms.
Yeah.
You should pay attention to those. But there's danger in getting too caught up into chasing pennies and nickels around on the floor and missing the big stuff.
Because you can't save your way to success. Going back to that that 5 hours per week example, if you spent 5 hours a week trying to save money in the company, or 5 hours a week trying to grow, to build, to bring in new opportunities, then compound that over a week, a month, a year, or even 5 years. After 5 years, the compounding effect of that 5 hours per week will be outstanding.
It absolutely. And that's, and there's many examples I'm thinking about as we go through this. The key is generally doing something to create value for a customer is a high value activity, because you're going to retain them, you're going to grow the business, you're going to get new additional customers, and you need to save. So the ultimate is you have a culture of saving money and being smart with money, for sure.
Yeah.
And we're not saying to be silly about it. It's just, and having a good discipline around it, but also to make sure that you don't get lost in it and put enough energy on strategy. There's one more thing around cost. And I do remember, and this is a restaurateur that I worked with, and I remember being with him at one of his restaurants, and he wanted to take a bottle of wine home that night for a dinner party he was having, and his restaurant had the one he wanted, so he bought it, and he went to the bar and he bought it, and he paid full price. And I said to him, his name was Bud, and I said, Bud, so tell me, why are you paying full price in your own restaurant? He goes, Kevin, do you notice how many people are watching me right now?
Yeah.
He goes, well, if I'm sitting here and pulling out my own credit card to pay for a bottle of wine, I'm setting an example.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm setting an example with my behaviors, right? And I set an example with the questions I ask and the comments I say. Mm-hmm. But he said, basically, he's setting the behavior of that, if the owner pays their own way, maybe everyone else should probably pay their own way. And as you know, there's lots of theft in restaurants. So there's the discipline around it. But, and again, I go back to BP, Brent Parent, he's talking about how, he role models focusing on the big circle opportunities and not really paying attention. But he's also not stupid with money. He wasn't stupid with money when he was a CEO either.
Yeah. Some parts of the business you need to focus on the cost constraints. You need to, but it's the broad issue here that as either leader of your house, let's say, or one of the leaders of your house, or one of the leaders of your business, it's a problematic mindset that you can get into, where you think that you can save your way to success. Instead, just accept that there is a cost of doing business, but the compounding effect of focusing on growing rather than saving can pay immense dividends.
So when you're thinking about where you and your team are focused, think about that. Are we overly focused on the wrong cost savings? Or maybe you need to do some more. But make sure it's the big picture, like Sirius, the airplane company. You're focused on the relevant scale of cost savings and at least at the level you're working out with executives and leaders. At the front lines, they might focus on some of the smaller things, and that's okay too. But then really, is there enough energy going to the other things that create growth? And as Brad's examples of the compounding of growth, imagine, something would add a new customer or add a new service to a new customer, whatever it happens to be. Your reporting nothing needs to be perfect. It needs to be good to very good, and then perfectly take care of the customers. Awesome. Anything else you'd add there, Brad?
Not really. Just know that it's a mindset. It's a trap that you can fall into. And if you can shift your mindset, it can compound and it can be really, really effective. So, and
I'll just share one last story
please.
Before as we close. I was just talking to someone today, and they were talking about someone in my personal life and how, they had been overcharged by $10 at a store they were at the other day, and how they went back to get it because that was a waste of $10. And I just sort of chuckled, and in this situation, I didn't want to say anything particular about it. I didn't want to be rude, but I did the math in my head. It cost them more than $10 to go get their $10.
Yep.
Right. It probably took an hour of time. Then there'd be some gas or petrol to go in the car, and wear and tear in the car. Like if you add all that up, if you add minimum wage value to their time, it costs them money to go get their $10.
Yep.
But that's a hard thing for some humans to do personally, and even more so in business. Like in some times, it's just not worth it. So this has been the Growth Whisperers. Thanks for listening. This is Kevin Lawrence, and I'm here with Brad Giles. And if you want the video version, go to youtube.com, look for the Growth Whisperers. And to reach Brad, evolutionpartners.com.au. Kevin is lawrenceandco.com. So keep an eye on your pennies, but ideally start chasing the dollars, or keep chasing the dollars, or the tens of thousands of dollars, or the millions of dollars, and doing good work. All right. Have a great week. See ya.